Even.
Whoa, there we go.
Hello. What do we got here? Yep, put it up. Put it up. Well, been trolling around looking for a dogtooth tuna. I think we got one hooked on here.
Happy with that?
Yeah, it's pretty good. There we got colour, we got dogtooth. We made a plan, we made it happen. It's pretty satisfying.
You always come through.
That's so cool. What a fish. Well, pretty lucky to have you here, Scott. Heading back in from Frederick Reef, boat in tow behind. It's been amazing to have you here. I'm just so glad that you could come out and do this trip. It's been pretty special, hasn't it?
I'm still pinching myself.
Well, and actually, sorry, I'm gonna cut you off because I realised I need to tell everyone who you are first. You know, the Scott Bannerow that I know has spent, well, marine biologist, then spent years sailing the Pacific with your family, and I met you in, where was it, Mooloolaba. You'd been in Bundaberg, met you in Mooloolaba, and we ended up fishing off Fraser Island, and that was nearly like, God, I hate to think, 20 years ago now. So
it was exactly 20 years
It was
ago.
exactly 20 years ago, and you know, you have so many, I guess, years of nautical experience from fishing, guiding, sailing around. It's yeah, I'm still hearing stories, even this trip, that I've never heard before. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, we've obviously known each other for a long time and spent time guiding on Nomad Sportfishing. So just to kind of set the scene, but yeah, it's been amazing to, I guess, kind of go back and relive those like Nomad Sportfishing days and sort of be out here and experience Frederick Reef. What was your take when we're like, hey, we're doing this again?
Well, I had the normal mix of excitement,
Yeah.
feeling a little overwhelmed. I couldn't wait. Same thing that always happens. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the third Odyssey now, really.
It is. Well, and you've been on all of them, so you know there's not many people that can say that. I mean, you know, the first green trawler kind of thing that we had in Harvey Bay at Fraser Island doing those charters, that was a pretty wild setup with the Kevlar Cat, and that's the first trip we ever did. You know, GT's Blue Marlin.
That was a great little ship. I loved it.
It was.
I've loved every Odyssey.
Yeah, they've been good. And I mean, you got to, you saw the second, the mothership that I guess Nomad Sportfishing got well known for. Yeah, saw that getting built in Cairns, turned up, towards the tail end of it, and had the first.
Thank goodness.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man, you didn't miss.
I saw all I needed to see.
Yeah, you did. You could tell in my eyes that.
It was just one look. I'm like, I get it.
I didn't need to be there any earlier. Absolutely, but I mean, those first couple of years out in the Coral Sea were amazing. Like,
I don't know how you pulled that together in the time that you did before the first charter either.
Oh, well, I mean,
as an aside.
Well, we kind of didn't. That's the whole thing. We only had one generator. We're like heading down the coast. We got like one generator. The boat wasn't really finished. We did those first set of charters, and then we had to go back up and get the bulbous bow actually put back on and finish up wiring the boat. So it was, it wasn't finished at all.
Finished, but from a client perspective, I don't think they felt that way.
No.
I think they were so happy. We had such a great trip.
It was.
And we went to such a great location.
Oh, it was incredible. Like going out to, what do we do? First trip at Wreck, and then we went Ken.
Was it?
Frederick.
I
think Wreck was the first one. Yeah, the very first one. That was that 3-day deal where we were late, and the French guy called that 40 kilo GT off the beach with Ed.
Oh yeah.
And then he complained about it. Didn't fight hard enough. You remember that?
Yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah, it was. It was a really, I don't know. It was a really interesting time. But I guess, it's kind of interesting how it's changed, and I suppose that was why I really wanted to get you to come out on the first trip, because you know such a big part of it all at the start. And I guess for everyone watching, and I'm sure I've told you this before, but you kind of like coming from Florida and such like a professional standard of guiding. We were all just kind of a bunch of young wannabe Australian fishermen, and
then it already caught 10 times more fish than any of us Florida fishing guides.
Yeah, but the level of professionalism, I think that education you managed to give us all about, professional guiding standards and what it takes to, to really be a professional fishing guide. It's very different to, I think, what can happen in places in Australia, or you don't know what you don't know. I think that's what it comes down to. And
well,
you showed us that.
But I think if I had to distill it down to one thing, it's just that you guys are used to catching the heck out of the fish.
Yeah.
And I know that when I started to, I got advice. My old friend Rick Ruoff was one of the guys who really emphasized that to me, and I'm just passing along those kinds of things, but he would say 70% entertainment and having a good time and 30% fish production.
Yeah.
Where the very natural mindset is 110% fishing and minus 10% anything else.
Yeah.
And it's a funny thing, but if you take a step back and think about it, people, it's having a great time.
It's having fun.
It's having fun. It's having those great times. Some of the greatest times were after fishing.
Yeah.
We'd crack a keg and shoot the breeze with people from all over the world.
Yeah.
We had and I learned so much from the operation.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of this cadre of people worldwide that are obsessed with GTs.
Yeah.
I
jigging,
didn't
popping,
really know
all of that.
Yeah.
It was
the jiggers, the pop, jig, pop, pop.
They came from all over.
They came from all over. Japan, Thailand, Europe. We got some Americans.
We had them from Russia eventually. It was it was crazy.
The elite from the Australian continent.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting. Malaysia.
Yeah, the Malaysians.
The Malaysian group.
That trip at Wreck Reef, they were just hardcore, and they'd been doing it for a long time.
But they like to have a good time.
They did.
But
they really did.
That said, it wasn't like some kind of big party fest. People were too tired for that. They were too beat up. We'd have a few laughs, have a couple of beers before dinner, and then everybody would disappear.
You're out there jigging all day, or casting, popping. Man, you come back and have a couple of beers and a nice feed, a little bit of conversation. It's nobody's awake very late at night if you're serious about fishing, that's for sure. But one of the things we want to talk about, I guess, was the difference in like the tackle we were using back then and the fishing. So maybe it's worth talking about the fishing. Like nearly 20 years ago, what's your take on what you saw at Frederick Reef the last week in terms of fish population and just what you saw in general? How does it compare to what you remember?
When you're taking clients fishing, although you're having a good time and so on, you do have to be on your game.
Yeah.
And you've got to be giving them the best day humanly possible and the best shot humanly possible at their target species.
Absolutely.
And things went well for us.
Yeah.
But we were learning a lot.
We were.
We also had limitations.
We did.
We had limitations. In 2005 especially, we were just doing whatever we could with the most durable
whatever was available
on the market, whatever was available, and that wasn't saying much compared to the pounding that we were getting and the number of reps.
Yeah.
Anything that didn't work got exposed quickly.
It did.
and it just went in a box and never came back. It got benched.
Yeah, I remember, I mean, we'd been doing charters at Fraser Island prior to that, but it was a whole different level going out in the Coral Sea. And I remember, feeling, I guess, pretty silly at times as a guide, because some of the tackle we're putting out was just not up to it at all, and it was quite obvious. But you kind of, you know, you're showing the clients like, well, man, this is like the best you can get. Like, I don't know what else I can use.
But you went the extra mile. You had lures from Japan.
Yeah.
You had the 500 or 300 pound decoy split rings.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had
and so
issues
it
with
wasn't
everything.
for lack of effort.
No.
It's not like you went to, well, I don't even know if there was Walmart then, but
No,
Kmart.
Might have been Kmart
picked up
over
some-
here, but
yeah,
no, we didn't go to Kmart and buy the tackle.
You didn't.
We were trying.
You weren't. Yeah, you didn't go and cut any corners, and you couldn't get a carpenter rod.
No,
I mean,
no,
know,
absolutely not. Let alone lures. But I mean, speaking of carpenter, that's an interesting little segue, because I mean, that's one of my, I guess, you know, really special memories from some of those early trips was, you know, taking Kanishi fishing, like that trip at Ken Reef, and he's in there like he's testing the original Carpenter Gammas that went on to be famous stick baits. I remember kind of watching him at the table at night. He had all the prototypes and they're all numbered, and you know, he's testing them. He's very, very methodical, you know, but I guess, you know, we had a lot of trips with him, but that first one was, you know, that was unbelievable. Oh, I think that Ken Reef trip with that Japanese group, I think it was literally the second charter.
Second charter.
Yeah.
That's right, because the first charter was not the Japanese group.
No.
I remember that, yeah. But that's one of the things now about the equipment available, thanks to you.
Yeah.
You've got all this fantastic stuff. And I remember we had some Australian custom-made rods, but the balance is wrong. It would kill your back.
Oh.
On those
In
big
hindsight,
GTs.
that was so bad. I've still got one of those custom-made rods, and I look at it and I'm just like,
We just,
yeah.
And it was beautiful craftsmanship. And,
Yeah.
And
it was just the
they
wrong
did a
tool
great
for the
It
job.
was just the wrong tool for the job.
Yeah.
And how was anyone going to know?
No.
Right.
It just was so, we're so early on in the days of, you know, using a 100-pound braid on a spin reel. It wasn't that long that, you know, the heavy Stellas and Saltigas and all that sort of stuff had actually come out and made, you know, even fishing that 100-pound braid even possible. So, you know, let alone having the right rod for the job. So,
Well, one of the biggest contrasts we saw, there was one American group in particular, and they came out with some whippy,
I remember those.
sort of American mass market rods.
Yep.
And some reels, and they ended up in small pieces, not even big pieces.
God, right.
They just, and I mean, after the first day, they just put it all away. Whatever survived, they put away.
They're like, hey, give me some stuff I can catch
give me
fish
some
on.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was amazing.
But I mean, we learned a lot, and I think that's, you know, that's one of the cool things. Well, it's been one of the cool things for me this trip. Like, you know, that whole charter experience, it was just a whole learning experience about fishing and tackle, and you know, how to catch fish, but what type of tackle you need to catch these big fish. And I guess in hindsight, we got so lucky with the repetitions out there to learn like so much so quickly.
Well, yeah, and getting back to one of the original thoughts that we were having is fast forwarding to Frederick Reef in 2023. We know right where to go.
Oh yeah.
Got
just
high tech equipment, lures.
Yeah.
Things that you developed over the years. You know the area.
Yeah.
And so is the fishing, what's the fishing like compared now to then? It's at least as good or better.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than, well, we hit a couple spots real quick the first afternoon.
Yeah.
And then we go, oh, let's go to that one corner.
Yeah.
Wham. You know.
And it's funny, like just looking back on it, being on that top corner, I was looking at the chart, thinking, oh yeah, I fished there and there and there. And it was based on whatever the current was doing. And I remember on these trips, we'd often, you know, we had 4 boats, so one of us would go north, one would go, you know, west, east, south, whatever. And I realized, I'm like, oh, I don't think I actually fished that bottom edge very much. And you were saying, oh, there's this little spur off the bottom, and that was the spot. And, you know, we tried the northern spots, and then it was like, oh, so you reckon that spot was good? And you're like, yeah, and you know, but it's all about which way the current's going, isn't it? So,
well, and that's another thing too. Think of all the data you have.
Oh.
Well, let me just get my phone out.
Yeah.
Here, let's just use the Wi-Fi on the boat. Let's just, oh, here's where the current's hitting.
It's mental to be sitting there and actually able to do that. It kind of feels wrong, like you're cheating, but at the same time, it's just like you're going to use all the tools that you got available to catch fish.
And we were in 17-foot Kevlar cats, and
yeah,
I'd say we had slightly more fishing power at our disposal.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild setup. But like I say, you learn what's the right tool for the job, and you know, we're trying to get set up out here to go and test tackle, and you know, that thing's the right tool for the job. We don't, you know, the smaller boat's harder to stand up on, it's harder to test tackle, and it's harder to film on. You don't really need anything bigger for what we're trying to do. It's perfect. So yeah, it's about having the.
But the reason you know that is that we had a 34-foot Kemper cat.
We did, and we had the 17-footers that we're fishing out of, and
we had another cat. We delivered that thing.
Yep.
We couldn't tow it.
No.
So we idled along with the mothership. We had somebody driving that. We had the mothership. We had all the skiffs craned on, and then their cradles on the mothership. And
oh God, I remember that.
I mean, so one of the most amazing things we did this trip was to run out to the Seamount.
Yeah,
Frederick.
That was such a novelty.
We did it the first trip too.
We did. It just took a little bit longer to get there.
Yeah.
We didn't have the opportunity to visit as often, but you know, it was interesting going to that Seamount because, you know, I think we all thought it was going to be guaranteed dogtooth tuna. Just it's going to happen. It'll be amazing. And I mean, it was an incredible day's fishing out there. Like absolutely amazing. The current just boiling. Like there's nowhere else. Well, certainly nowhere else I've ever fished where you've got this seamount that literally comes up to 45 meters out of 3,000. It's just like you can't even imagine the underwater structure down there, and the obvious complexity of the hydrography. Yeah,
color changes.
The color changes were incredible. Like those plumes of like green water coming up.
Yeah.
Like imagine the nutrients just coming from thousands of meters down, hitting that wall, and just like. Everything was there. It was, you know, you knew the dogtooth were there, whatever was going on.
We really knew we were there because we had the troll probe.
Exactly.
And one tried to eat it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we knew they were there, but I mean, maybe
they were getting out competed a little bit too by the Wahoo. Well, there were so many. There was Wahoo, the Yellowfin.
So many Wahoo there.
Yeah. Just we're talking about. Well, I wasn't disappointed, but I know you. You know, we were targeting the big dogtooths and so on. And we could see them on the machine.
Yeah.
It's just that with the other thing, like with any healthy wilderness system, it was wall-to-wall sharks.
Yeah.
At times, I think we could have walked on their backs just about.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a little scary.
But we're talking about a day we're like, well, yeah, we didn't want to drop a jig down from the giant dogtooth that we can see down there because we were just going to feed them to the sharks. Yeah. So all we did was have a nice marlin on for 10 minutes or so, or 5 minutes. And catch unlimited Wahoo, as many yellowfin tuna as we could handle.
It's pretty insane. Yeah. I mean, that big Wahoo, that was a proper Wahoo that we got there too. It was a serious fish. So you're never going to be disappointed with that. It's
and you know, you've got a fat little aging guide out from the Florida Keys. Okay, you're on the rod. Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Again. Put the drag to sunset.
That's it.
I'm getting ragdolled on the
I forgot.
These guys are all laughing.
I forgot the bit to tell you didn't actually need to pick it up. There was the leave it in the gunnel program. So
yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah, you can say that if you want.
Yeah.
But you're like, well, the stand-up, belt's right there. I knew what that meant. Okay.
Yeah, I may have forgotten that little detail.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
If you want to be a pansy, just leave it in the holder.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, that's
Damon,
fine.
I get it.
Pretty good. But I mean, that comes back to, I guess, talking about the learning like how to catch these fish. So, you know, it might look like, oh, we're trolling these bent butt, 80 wides or whatever with crazy heavy braid for Wahoo, and it's total overkill for Wahoo. You don't need tackle that heavy to catch Wahoo. Now, sure, it makes it a little bit easier. I know there's plenty of guys troll around with bent butts for big Wahoo. There's nothing wrong with it, but
well, it does and it doesn't, because if you have a Wahoo or a yellowfin on a lighter drag and a spin rod, it's one thing.
Yeah.
But you've got a green 45-pound yellowfin on the bent butt, and you're trying to horse them in because you want to get something else. And that was work for me. Not for you.
It was work, but it was work. But I think it comes back to your learning thing. Yeah, it was fun work, but it's your learning thing of like, we knew that was the gear. Like if you want to stop a big dogtooth, we've learned from.
That was light tackle.
That was light tackle.
Yeah.
That was like absolute, you know, on the edge sport fishing for what these big dogtooth can do. And we've only learned that by, you know, trial and error experience. And, you know, I guess the other part of it was we knew that, yes, you can catch big dogtooth jigging. We've done it. We've seen it happen. We've caught 100 kilo doggies jigging, but we also know how many you lose jigging and the odds of actually landing a big one jigging.
What did you tell me on the way out? You said like 1 in 100.
It's 100 to 1. Honestly, if I looked at all of the years of big dogtooth, how many we've hooked versus how many you actually get in the boat, I genuinely think they are one of the probably the hardest fish to actually catch a really big specimen of. And you look at everything that's stacked against you with the structure, the nature of the fish, sharks. There's not much else that has that degree of difficulty.
And you've got the specialty situations where you can slow troll the stick baits on the edges and this and that. But you want to get a big bad one.
Yeah.
In fact, this one just caught that big bad one. You want to get a big bad one?
Yeah.
DTX, it's a very well-named lure.
It is.
And I got to be honest, I didn't know what DTX stood for.
Really? There you go.
Dogtooth Extreme. Now I know.
Well,
now I know.
Because that's where it started. It was all, you know, those minnows we were trolling, it was all about trying to get a big minnow. I mean, if I could justify it, I'd make a DTX200 just for dogtooth, because, you know, we knew, like, the bigger the lure that you could troll, the more dogtooth you were going to catch, and also the deeper you could go, the more dogtooths. Well, case in point, that was.
I caught a couple of really nice dogtooths on this. It's an old lure that's no longer made.
Yeah.
But look, it's big.
Oh,
I mean,
it's huge.
It's like you're saying, and this is a 220.
That's the 220.
Yeah.
See, you know, we made that because it's probably the biggest thing that, you know, most guys are going to look at on the shelf and use it. Like I said, I'd quite happily use a DTX400 if you want to, you know, catch a 100 kilo dogtooth. But part of that learning came from, like, I remember that first trip at Frederick on the Seamount where you brought those Lulu teasers.
Oh, right.
And I'm standing up in the tower watching, and you put this thing over. Man, these dogtooth were coming up at the back of the boat. It was like nothing I had ever seen. It was like we'd gone into like Jurassic Park, and there's these giant things just flashing under Lulu, just crushing it. Well, we did the first troll over that Seamount, and I just remember eyes popping out of my head looking at these things just crushing that Lulu teaser. And I don't know, I think we might have hooked a couple. Anyway, we went jigging, and
yeah, we rigged it with a hook.
Yeah, ended up rigging it with a hook.
Yeah.
But that day, that was the day we caught that giant, you know, 100 odd kilo one jigging with Uncas, that last turn on the spool, like,
that was
crazy lucky. The leader situation with dogtooth and wahoo, I mean, we've got this one here that we had on wire, and, you know, you look at it and you're like, well, we're catching wahoo, but I mean, take a look at that lure, and how many teeth marks are there anywhere around the lip?
That's a good point.
I'm seeing none.
Right.
So, you know, we've run these with mono a lot, and, you know, I guess when we're out here trying to test stuff, and, you know, part of the deal for me is I want the lure to get hit as many times as it can and just check that it's going to keep swimming. So, you know, I'm kind of taking out the risk of losing the lure for the interests of testing the product. But from a fish catching perspective, if I was in an area, you know, back home where it was maybe a little more pressured, or the fish were a little more, you know, susceptible to seeing stuff, I'd 100% be running mono even for my wahoo fishing, because
the competition isn't.
Exactly, and, you know, they get bit. But that's the cool thing with these sort of, you know, lipped minnows. The fish are always hitting it in the middle, and we've got all that troll, you know, the underwater footage that we've got. You can watch where they hit it, and yeah, I genuinely don't think that you need to, you know, to use wire. I certainly, when we're, you know, back closer to land, I do a lot of trolling with no wire, and, you know, it's that risk with wahoo, but
it's more risk with with
Yeah.
with the Mad Scat and
Or a Mad Max that's got the toe point on the top there, yeah.
the Squid Treks. But we were
Yeah.
catching a lot of them on this on mono.
We did. We caught
We did
plenty.
put some wire on so we just wouldn't
Yeah.
lose.
Again, it was the lure testing
lose
side of it there, I
yeah.
think, but
but
you know, but the mono definitely works, and that's something that, you know, I think a lot of people probably overlook. I've seen a lot of guys actually over in the US starting to talk about. In fact, I saw something a couple of weeks ago. Somebody had put up about being an advocate of, you know, using mono. I can't remember if they were fishing in the Gulf or out off Florida, but you know, they're catching a lot of wahoo, and they're like, man, I'm just running mono, I'm crushing the fish. So, you know, and it probably sounds like I'm saying that just because it's, you know, it's something to lose lures, but I don't think it is. I actually think you know, it's a way to actually catch more fish. So
we had an awful lot of fish in the past 6 days.
yeah,
and the mono definitely outcaught the wire.
oh, no question.
It definitely did.
You know, and you learn a lot. You see on that underwater footage where they hit the lures. You know, I'd feel confident with it. But anyway, back to the FG knot. That was really interesting because I guess you've had a bit of an education, because that first couple of years we weren't really using it. I think there was I think it might have been a Japanese group that first showed us, and it was on a trip with Glanville. Haydenrick was one of our guides from South Africa later on. I was on a trip with him, and we started using it. I think we got it shown to us as a jigging knot originally by these Japanese guys, and then we ended up starting, you know, playing around with it, and it ended up as obviously the go-to casting knot. But
what does FG stand for?
Well, I still don't even know, to be honest. Like,
You know what?
We're going to
The sad thing
assume.
is I looked it up. I Googled it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I did.
Oh, we've lost one. There we go. Must be out from behind the reef here, but anyway. Yeah, so what does it stand for?
I don't know.
Oh.
I can't even remember.
Oh, there you go.
I think I looked it up a few years ago.
Yeah,
but
I've got no idea. I've just always thought it was the obvious good.
Well, you're so good at tying them. You're so fast.
Yeah.
And when you were over in Florida, you were testing some of your mono blends, and I think at that time. Now this goes back. That's good. That's 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And you were saying that,
it's a
well,
ways back.
you weren't necessarily comfortable with using it with the pure fluorocarbons that were on the market then.
Yeah.
And which are still dominating the U.S. market today.
Yep.
And when you said that, I thought, well,
not for me.
I know, you know, first of all, we're using relatively light lines, so the unis, it catches a little on the guides, it knocks some inserts out, but but you got to have that fluorocarbon. You can't. One thing we don't do is we don't have knot failures. You can't do that to somebody, so
can't happen.
So it doesn't fail.
No.
It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But it allows us to use all that fluorocarbon, at least that I like to use.
Yeah.
But now we've got you found that there are ways of tying the FG.
Yeah.
I mean, they call it the FG knot. There's about at least 10 FG knots. Maybe 15.
There's a lot of variation.
I've seen 7 of them this week.
Yeah.
And
well, but I think the similarity. So for people that don't, you know, or maybe get caught up in the technical details, it sounds overwhelming to someone saying, "Oh my God, there's 15 different versions of an FG knot." But the reality is that, you know, the leader and the braid being kind of twisted and essentially plaited over each other.
It's all the same.
That's your strength. The variation is in how you achieve that and how people like to finish off the tag end. So, you know, you're effectively trying to stop that tag end from coming loose.
You can say the same thing about a bimini.
Yeah.
You know, bimini twist, there's different styles of finishing it.
Yep, absolutely. It's just
some of the same styles.
Some of the same, but the strength is in, you know, that line twisting back up itself when you're doing a bimini, and it's a similar sort of thing for an FG knot.
So what I did today was I saw some little quick way of doing it on YouTube before I came over, and I said, oh, I know these guys are going to be using the FGs. I'll do this. And I tied one up quickly the first day. It held. It was good. But then as I started to use different leader strengths, I couldn't get it to behave correctly. Yeah. So that's when I got even more interested in relearning from Damon and from Nick. Yeah. And really from everybody. But I was still struggling, and I realized I've just I can't really lift my thumb all the ways. I mean, I broke a tendon, and, you know, it wasn't broken badly enough where I wanted to have a 3-month rehab and surgery. So it dangles a little bit, but just that difference. So Nick told me, he goes, well, just switch hands, just teach yourself to do it left-handed.
Yep.
So this morning I said, you know, I'm going to do that, and I just sat down and.
Well, Nick showed you.
Well, very patiently. He goes, here, video this in case when you get home. But it's like the bimini. I just wanted to say it's just like a bimini. There's nothing hard about tying a bimini twist. It's all in the setup. There's nothing hard about throwing a cast net. It's all in the nuances of the setup.
Exactly.
If you've set it up perfectly, you're preordained. It's going to happen for you. And the FG's the same way. Now that said, I was struggling with the setup, and then I got it.
Then it clicks.
Then it clicks.
It
and then
clicks.
I did 20 in a row.
There you
because
go.
I'm old.
But I mean that's.
I'm gonna have to look at the video in the morning. No.
Yeah, but
but
that's what you have to do. I mean, when we learned it,
whatever it takes to win.
You got to do it. You got to just keep learning it, because it's such an effective knot for casting. It's it's as close as you're going to get to 100% knot strength. And I mean, I just spent years having to learn how to tie it quickly, because a lot of the trips we were doing later on in the Barrier Reef, in that shallow water, the coral, you're fishing in 4 to 10 feet of shallow coral. You're doing 15 to 20 of these a day. The guys are just boom, 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 just through it. So, I sort of had and have been tying, what's the kind of the guide version, the quickest, fastest way that you can tie that knot. But I mean, even Nick, and for the people that watching this that don't know, Nick is behind the camera on all of this stuff, gun fisherman, really knows his stuff, and he was showing us a different way that he finishes it as well for some of the barramundi fishing that he does, for using it with bait casters. And I'm not ashamed to say I learned something even today just watching that. I'm like, hey, that's actually a really nice way to finish that. I like it. I'm going to try that for what I'm doing. He was showing you the same technique.
Well, and he had the kindness and the patience to sit there with me.
Yeah.
And again, it couldn't have been easy, because he only had to show me like 20 times. But it's just nuances of the setup. But of course, the problem was I was trying to use my lame hand for a while.
It doesn't help.
Well, no. So anyway, but once you get that set up, you got it.
So what are you? So you've seen all these different styles. What are you taking home thinking that is the FG knot style that you like the best?
Well, I would generalize it and say, in terms of everything about fishing, I just want to be like you and Nick. but that applies to the FG knot too.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But so I've seen a couple of other quick ways to do it.
Yeah.
But in the heavy conditions.
Yeah.
And this is you guys are in the most severe testing factory.
Yeah.
That I'm aware of on the planet.
Yeah.
And if it holds up here, holds up anywhere.
It's
it was what you call your fast guide version of the FG that you caught that big dogtooth on.
Yeah.
And we happen to have Nick's version on this other one. It caught a bunch of big fish. I love the artistic finish and the smoothness of that one. But the main thing is that it doesn't break, and yours goes right in and right out of the guide. So what's the difference?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because it got me thinking about it, and I think the difference I've realised I've actually been playing around with different finishes the last couple of years for the tag end, because not being out on charter every day, that way that I was doing it was great, but most of those knots, if they had a 3-hour lifespan, that was it. That
was a record.
Yeah, you were killing it. It was great. Someone's going to get busted off. Someone's going to cast it off. Something's going to go wrong, and you're going to be retying it again. So it needs to hold, and it needs to be quick. But the longevity of the way that I think I'd been doing it. So I'd been playing around with these Rizzuto finishes on the braid, but not on the braid and the leader, which is what Nick was showing us. And I really like the Rizzuto finish on the braid and the leader, just for a more long-term, like if it's something that you're going to have on your rod for a couple of weeks, that actually makes more sense. But it made me realize I'd been tying them in a way that kind of suits the conditions. Like if I'm jigging, I'll just tie a quick one because I don't need to cast with it, and the way that I've been tying it forever works great. I mean, we had the boat anchored on the Seamount with that squid tracks with one of them, and we're in a...
it was fine.
Yeah.
And also too, if you had 3 clients, tons of sharks and tons of coral,
yeah,
you're not gonna do that beautiful extra time knot, because it would just be foolish.
Exactly.
You can tie something that's gonna, but there's one thing that I would say. I in my research and so on, and I think it's good to mention that. So the key to the knot is 16 to 20 turns of it's a braided effect.
Yes.
On the braid on the leader, right?
Yeah.
And then either 1 to 3 half hitches, depending on who you are,
yes,
to secure it.
Yes.
It does it with 1 half hitch.
Yep.
And then it's pulling that tight that's key, right?
Yeah.
So then you're talking about your finish. Well, there are guys out there saying, 3 half hitches.
Yeah.
And you guys are saying, no, that'll come off under the right conditions.
Yeah.
Well, that's out for me.
Yeah.
That cannot happen.
No.
It can't happen.
No.
So anybody who does it like that, well, if it works for their fishery, that's great. But I'm not in that category.
Yeah,
I
and
can't
I've seen the type of fishing you've got in Florida, and I agree. I think that your rigging rods, you're not getting busted off on the reef. You need something that you can use day in, day out, long term. They can cast it.
But we get sharked a lot.
Yeah.
We got mangroves a lot, and you're fortunate. So after you secure the 20 turns,
yep,
right, the 16 to 20 turns, let's say,
yeah,
with 1 to 3 half hitches, whatever,
yep,
then you're talking about a Rizzuto. That's all.
Exactly. That's
anyone could look that up or see it on YouTube.
It's simple, and it's a 10. It was a 10-turn Rizzuto.
His was 10. Yours was.
Yeah.
You did 4.
Well, I was doing 4 back up the braid, sort of playing around with that.
Yeah.
But
which held.
Yeah, that holds fine, and I haven't had issues with that either. But I do. I
hadn't seen that actually. I thought you always had to go around the braid and the leader, but
I got shown that somewhere years ago, and just stuck with me. I was like, oh yeah, I'll try that, and it works. But it just kind of depends how you want to finish it. But I really like the Rizzuto up both. I think that was that's a really good way to do it. So and look, we'll do some video later and just show everyone exactly how we're talking about tying these, because I think it does come down to speed versus, I guess, strength for what you're doing. So we've got a few lures rolling around there, don't we? Anyway,
but profile.
It's just
that's a slick profile.
Yeah, it is. It looks really good, and like I said, I played with them. They look great. I'm really interested to to test them. But anyway, we probably should go downstairs and we'll tie a few knots and actually show everyone what we're talking about with that FG, because but it is really interesting. I think the learning, and to me, that's kind of the whole point of doing these trips. It's I'm learning stuff. You're out here, you've fished all over the world, and you're here, learning a new way to tie a knot because you're thinking you're going to take it back home for guiding. And,
well, I'm definitely going to.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, that's amazing. Like for you to, I guess, get that out of this trip's really cool.
Well, speed was another big issue. The fluorocarbon was an issue. Fluorocarbon's pretty much gone now.
Yeah.
And but watching you guys tie those things so fast, as long as it's possible, I'm in.
Absolutely. And I think
you can tie. You guys are tying the 10-turn Rizzuto faster than I can tie you now. So I am so grateful to you guys. I'm grateful to you for ever hiring me in the first place.
Well, that was a no-brainer, that one.
And then secondly, after all these years, to have the opportunity to come out and spend some time and learn so much, as usual.
Yeah.
It's been an epic experience.
It has.
I want to thank you. I want to thank Nick.
Oh,
I want to thank Kurt.
Yeah.
I want to thank Maddie.
Yeah.
I want to thank John. I want to thank everybody.
Yeah,
It's
well,
been great.
hey, we need to thank you, because honestly, I think it's fair to say that without, you know, I mean, the way I feel about it, without you there for the first couple of years of Nomad Sportfishing, it, you know, it could have been a whole different deal. I think we learned so much, you know, from you in terms of, like I said, professionalism and just the way that you went about doing what you were doing, that we just never had exposure to that in Australia. We just didn't know, and it was like standard operating procedure for you.
I like to say, if you haven't learned something new every single day, you weren't paying attention.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think that's the fun with fishing, and I don't know, maybe that's what I enjoy about tackle. You're always learning something about, you know, how can you make it better? You know, how can you make something either swim better or get bit more or last longer, or, you know, how is it more fun to use it, or, you know, just whatever it is. It's I don't know, it's fun, I guess. So it's kind of the same as doing charters.
Well, I'm just imagining, it could even be this same table, but it might be.
Yeah.
Let's see, in another 20 years, you're going to be around 65.
Yeah.
You're going to be around 85.
Yeah.
And there'll be a whole new set of lures.
Yeah.
Here. They won't look anything like this.
No, they'll be
I don't know what
completely
they're gonna look like.
different.
It's going to be completely different.
Yeah, well, we'll probably be, you know, old and decrepit, and, you know, needing to catch small fish on small lures. And I think the thing I really love is the visual nature of it, and that's probably something we didn't talk about with the charters. You know, seeing fish hit the lures just gets me excited. I don't care if it's fish this big, if it's on top water, and I can, or if it's a, you know, jerk bait or whatever, and I can see the fish hit the lure, I'm getting excited about it. And you probably never even made me think about it to that point, but it's maybe because I'm seeing it and I can learn something about how they eat the lure. It's just fun. So anyway, we'll see.
People ask on charters all the time, they go, well, what is your favorite fish to fish for? And honestly, all of them.
Yeah.
To have a little 4 or 5 year old out there casting a light spinning rod and catching a sea trout, ladyfish, jackerbow, every cast, and being stoked about it when they get back to the dock.
Yep.
That's as much fun as when I had a chance to target giant blacks with you. And
absolutely.
remember the big 1,400 pounder on the teaser and the 2 800 pounders on either rigger?
I was never gonna forget that. It was the most insane sight.
And the 800 pounder hooks up on the rigger, and you go, oh no! And I'm going,
really? What's wrong with this? It's like you didn't see the one in the middle. It was like twice the size.
I know.
It was ridiculous. But yeah, I guess that's the fun of fishing. You never know what's going to happen, do you? It's just a learning experience. So well, we better go and tie some of these knots and show everyone how we do these FGs and wrap it up. But man, been absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Great.
Just
Thanks so much.
been an absolute pleasure. Can't wait to fish with you again.
Fantastic.
Hopefully it'll be in Florida somewhere next time.
I'll be waiting for you.
Sounds good. All right, thanks, Scott.
Right.
So I'm literally starting from underneath with the mono, and I'm wrapping it around each arm of the braid, and I'm bringing it back in the middle, and I'm using my middle finger here to kind of keep pressure on it as I wrap it around each arm of the braid. So you'll see I'm forming that kind of weave. I'll do a few more, just weave it through. That's what I'm trying to do, but I'm also controlling with my finger the way that weave kind of lays on. I don't want it to be too spaced out. I want it to be reasonably tight. So you kind of, you know, give it a little cinch down there. And I'll just keep going here. So again, depending on the braid and the weight of the leader that you're using, determines how many wraps you're going to do. So on that one, I'll do a couple more, and that's pretty much it. So that's actually where the strength is in your knot. What I do now is literally do a half hitch over both the braid. So I'm kind of putting my finger on it there to keep that a little bit tight while I do the half hitch. So at this point, in my mind, you've pretty much got all of your knot strength there. So that's the point where you're going to tighten it up. You can see I can pull on, like, absolutely pull on that like crazy, and it's not going to come undone. even just with 1/2 hitch. So everything we do from here is about securing the end of the knot. So I'll give that a little neaten up there. Now I'm going to show you on this one what I did on the last one is that I did 3 1/2 hitches around the braid and the leader, and then I did 3 1/2 hitches just around the braid. So when I say a 1/2 hitch, I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about there. It's literally just wrapping it round over and back under and doing that. So that's a 1/2 hitch. So I've done 2 there just for demonstration. We're going to do this 10 turn risotto finish here just to show you what it looks like. I hope I've left myself with enough tag end. I think I'm pretty close. So basically what we're doing here is we're going to wrap it around. So we've made a loop and I'm wrapping the braid around both the braid and the leader. And you would actually do this 10 times. I'm going to probably stop short here because I've run out of tag end. But you lay that down there and then you just fold this over the opposite direction to just lay it nicely . Now I sometimes will do that and sort of fold it back over on itself, but you know, I've been playing around with like a 7 or an 8 turn risotto finish where you don't have to do that fold it back over deal. So once you've folded it back over on itself, you can just pull that tag end and you've got control over what you're doing, and you end up with a nice neat finish to the knot. So I'll tighten that up a little bit more there. So that risotto finish, you know, for me, I'm just going to take it out of the camera for a second, give it a quick tug. There it is, that's back, just tighten it up. So that's what your FG with what probably ended up as a 7 or 8 turn risotto. You can do 10 if you want to, you can play around with however many turns you want to do. But the cool thing about this, as Nick was telling us, is you can cut this really, really close, and you can also cut your tag end really, really close. So you don't have a lot of, you know, you don't have a lot of fluff hanging out there. So that's your finished product. It's a really nice, neat knot. Like I said, you do want to make sure you don't have any sort of potential for that mono to chafe. It's a really nice, neat cut there. I'm not too worried about that, but if you had a rougher cut, it could fray. So that's your knot. That's your FG with the risotto finish over the leader and the braid. Yeah, I think it'll work well. I like that finish. I think for longevity, that's something I'm going to play around with a little bit more. Like I said, it takes a little bit longer. I think if I had that on a rod in the gunnel, the covering board or whatever, I think I'd be able to do that. I think I'd be able to do that just about as quickly as the other way I'm doing it anyway. So
I don't have a doubt in my mind.